Hi guys, this is actually quite strange. It looks like Brexiteers might actually want to rejoin the European Union and the single market. Now that's the impression I got when hardline Brexiteer Kemi Badenoch delivered a speech as part of her job as the Secretary of State for International Trade. Now she talked about bringing down barriers, she talked about increasing trade, and becoming Europe's biggest investment destination. Anyway, that's enough from me. Have a listen to what seems to be some Brexit regret.
So how are we going to deliver that economic growth, those opportunities, and the secure global trading environment that we need? It's through these 5 priorities. First, we will remove trade barriers. Second, we will...
Wait a minute, before we get on to second, what do you mean remove trade barriers? Wasn't Brexit about putting up trade barriers with your nearest neighbours? Wasn't it about making trade more difficult? Businesses have had to relocate. Businesses have had to adapt to the new environment. That's made trade more difficult. Before we're getting on to point 2, you should really explain point 1. But anyway, she's not going to.
Grow UK exports every year until we hit our race to $1 trillion. Selling over...
Okay, so this is this race to $1 trillion in trade. How are you going to achieve that if you have barriers to trade? Wouldn't it make sense to remove the barriers to trade? Now, she's claiming that she will, but not undo Brexit. So please explain to me how you're going to maintain Brexit, which is putting up barriers to trade, and remove barriers to trade and allow the UK to arrive at this £1 trillion a year. Now, she doesn't say when the £1 trillion a year will happen. Is it 2030, 2040? Well, it'd be probably whenever the Tories are not in power.
Over £1 trillion of goods and services to the world a year by 2030.
Okay, so when the Tories are not in power.
Third, we will make the UK the undisputed top investment destination in Europe.
How are you going to achieve that? Once again, if you have barriers to trade, it makes it very difficult to encourage investment. Now, this is, I'll leave a link in the description of this video to this data. UK foreign direct investment from 1970 to 2023. I've just reduced it to the last 10 years. You can see here something happened in 2016. Investment was up and then it suddenly decreased. Why did it decrease? I wonder what happened in 2016. Now it's recovering slightly, but is it going to recover to a level that was seen in 2016? Probably not. But it's, once again, it's very difficult if you have barriers to trade, and Brexiteers don't seem interested in removing barriers to trade.
Attracting new investment into communities and helping to level up the country. Fourth, we will seal high-quality deals with India and CPTPP.
Okay. 2 problems here. First, in India, they have said, if you want to have a trade deal with us, there needs to be, in a sense, open borders for allowing migrants to move from India to Britain. But for the Brexiteers, that's a problem. Because, as I've said on a number of occasions, there are 2 types of Brexiteers. There are the disaster capitalists who would be very happy to bring people in, to work in P&O ferries or whatever, bring in migrant workers who work through agencies with no worker protections and will work for half the minimum wage. That's what the disaster capitalists would be very happy with. But then on the other side, if you bring in all these workers, the racists and bigots who voted for Brexit won't be happy. So the Tories are in a bit of a between a rock and a hard place. Bring in all the workers to reduce the following the reduction in protections for workers, bring in all of these low paid workers. That's great. It helps these businesses. But on the other hand, if there are a lot of workers coming in, the people who wanted to get all the Europeans out won't be too happy to see a lot of Indian people arrive. So that's the problem. And the Indian government has said, we're not going to sign a trade deal with you unless you allow more Indian workers to arrive in the UK. And then on the CTPPP or CPPT, whatever it's called, this trade deal, a number of countries have said we're not going to sign this. We're not going to allow the UK to be part of this trading partnership if you don't respect the Good Friday Agreement and the Northern Ireland Protocol. So they said, we're not going to sign an agreement with the UK if they're willing to break international agreements, but also if it's undermining peace in Northern Ireland, we don't want to be part of that. So once again, Brexiteers are in a bit of a difficult spot.
The fifth and final priority is to defend free trade and make the world more secure by strengthening supply chains and standing up to protectionism.
Okay, but standing up to protectionism and strengthening supply chains. Once again, supply chains have been destroyed by Brexit. Not completely, but in a very bad state because of Brexit. But when it comes to protectionism, protectionism is not always bad, in the same way that free trade is not always good. Protectionism protects local businesses. For example, British farmers, when the UK was a member of the European Union, were protected. Now they're exposed. British farmers would like a bit of protectionism, in the same way that free trade has its benefits, but it also comes at a cost. So I'm thinking here that she's supporting the UK rejoining the EU and the single market, because she's talking about increasing trade, making the UK a centre for investment. And I don't see any of that happening unless the UK rejoins the EU and the single market. But then she's a Brexiteer. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot.